This is the final video in my project of making a replica, original Imperial German Karabiner 98 carbine. But before the reveal, let's take a step back and quickly run through what it took to get here. It all started with a barreled action and a pile of parts. I converted the rust to bluing by boiling and carding the action. The stock started as an FN model 1950 Mauser stock. It was semi-finished, which meant it first needed to be inlet for the action. Then it needed to be shaped, since the exterior was oversized. I started with the buttstock. After the initial stock work was complete, I modified the Longa-Visier rear sight and base by shortening them about 3/4 of an inch and placing them further back on the barrel. I then upsized the VZ24 middle band and made a new socket for the bayonet lug. Once those were done, I was able to fully shape the front end of the stock and make a handguard from scratch. Then came a few smaller items. The barrel was shortened to its final length. The front sight was attached to the barrel, and a cleaning rod was shortened to fit. I then machined the nose cap from scratch. The shape of the Kar 88 spoon bolt handle was matched on a Mauser 98 bolt. And after all of that work, the wood was finished and boiled in seed oil, and the metal parts were rust blued. Without any further ado, here is the completed Kar 98. I need to stress again, this is a replica, made to look like a 1905 model Kar 98. It's certainly not an original, and it's not even an exact copy. I made it to resemble an original, and to have the same look, feel, and handling. And I may be a bit biased, but I think it's a bit better than the only other replica Kar 98 I've seen. I admit though, there are a number of inaccuracies and compromises. The largest compromise is that I didn't want to modify the barrel other than shortening it. In order to place the rear sight closer to the action, I had to modify the sight base in order for half of it to fit over the chamber. I made the choice to not turn down the barrel in this area for safety concerns. I'm not an engineer, so I'm not sure how much material is needed in this area, or if any could be removed safely. I decided not to risk it, and work around the problem instead by modifying the sight base. Working forward, with perhaps safety less in mind than practicality, I chose not to turn down the barrel at the middle band either. The reason here is simpler. I have no way of doing so, since the barrel doesn't fit in my lathe. This results in the step in the barrel being visible within the middle band. I'm not sure of the Kar 98's barrel profile, whether it's stepped like this Gewehr 98 barrel is, though in different places, or if it's tapered like on the later Kar 98 AZ. Another area on the carbine that I flat out got wrong is the butt plate. The Kar 98's butt plate has a longer top tang than the Gewehr 98 butt plate that I used. The Kar 98 AZs look similar from pictures, and may have been a better choice for this. And last, I would have preferred to make the rear sight base and middle band from scratch like I did the nose cap. With these I was limited by tooling. They're both very complex shapes. The middle band being curved on all surfaces, which is very hard to machine in general, but nearly impossible to duplicate on opposing sides. The rear sight is flat on each side, but the curves at the top and the matching curve for the adjustment track are nearly impossible to machine, at least on a manual machine like I have. Other smaller differences aren't as noticeable, like the extra wood that I mistakenly removed around the magazine, and these smaller pieces of wood that I needed to add to the front end near the nose cap that don't quite match. All of these details are what makes it a replica, and not an exact copy. But what I got right is the look, and the look of the Kar-98 is very unique. No other Mauser, or really any pattern of rifle looks like this does. From the nose cap, the very thin strip of wood at the front with the bayonet lug fitting over it, to the small roller coaster sight, the spoon-shaped bolt handle, and the overall shortness of it. Nothing else comes close. I haven't discovered much more information on the history of this carbine since filming the first video in the series. However, CN Arsenal released an updated video on the Kar-98A or the Kar-98AZ, so give that a watch for a more concise and accurate history of the original Kar-98. One thing I have learned since then is that the differences in the rear sight types that I observed earlier may be due to pre- and post-Spitzer ammunition testing or adoption. The taller sights on the right would be for the round-nosed Patron 88 ammunition, since they would drop more at range. The flatter sights on the left would be for the flatter shooting Spitzer rounds. But that's just an observation of mine, and may be completely inaccurate. One feature that makes the Kar-98 unique among carbines is its ability to mount a bayonet. The standard bayonet of the German army at the time was the Gewehr 98, also known as the quillback. With a 20-inch long blade, this would give the carbine a lot of extra reach. However, with the Kar-98 intended to be issued to engineer troops in addition to cavalry, the shorter and handier Gewehr 9805 might make more sense. This one is a sawback intended for pioneer troops. I imagine it would make sense to issue them carbines as well. Unfortunately, I don't have an SG 9802 bayonet, which would have been more widely issued at the time over the just adopted 9805. The higher muzzle ears of this Alter Art example are wide enough to fit around the Kar-98's nose cap. This one is a bit tight on the bayonet lug though. There is one more major type of Gewehr 98 bayonet, the Ersatz bayonets issued early in World War I. While the mortise fits onto the bayonet lug, the muzzle ears aren't designed to work with the Kar-98, and it doesn't seat all the way. That's because by the time these bayonets were designed and issued in 1914 to 1915, the Kar-98 was far removed from service. That's enough talk. Let's see how this rifle performs. I'm particularly interested in the recoil, since that's the primary reason why this pattern was never adopted. I'm also curious to see how the bolt handle feels. I'll find out at the range. I'll be shooting 3 different types of rounds. I have these cast bullets, which are loaded fairly light, some leftover reloads with FMGs, which are fairly moderate, and then a box of PPU, which in my other rifles is comparable to the previous reloads. I don't have any surplus ammo, since I want to see how reloads and commercial ammo does first. I'll start off with the cast bullets. These loads almost feel like 22 when shot in my Gewehr 98. There's quite a bit more recoil when shooting them out of this, probably due to the almost 13-inch difference in barrel length. Let's try a few more. The recoil feel is almost comparable to the PPU being shot out of my Gewehr 98. There does seem to be some sort of problem with the ejector. Even when the bolt is forcibly pulled back, it still doesn't always want to eject. The spring does feel a bit weak, and the ejector box is sticking out a bit from where it's supposed to be. I'll have to fix this later. Next, I'll load 5 more from a clip. The bolt takes some getting used to, whether or not it will eject the case. I'll experiment with different grips to see if any one works best. Next, I'll step up to the PPU. And that feels like a cannon compared to the cast bullets. I saw a big fireball from behind the sights. Let's see if I can get it on camera. I'll try darkening the exposure. It's more of a flash of light filling the whole frame than a fireball. I'll have to see if I can shoot at dusk to properly capture it, and I may need to zoom out some. Next, I'll shoot 5 rounds. And since I know someone will say something about using the bolt to push out the empty clip, my shoulder will be sore tomorrow. I can see why this carbine was never adopted. The recoil is intense, and I'm shooting sitting at a range under the best conditions. If I were to shoot this standing, under pressure, or worse, from horseback, it would be basically uncontrollable. And finally, I'll test some of my reloads. These actually feel a bit lighter than the PPU did, or maybe I'm getting more used to the heavy recoil. I'll finish the day off easy with 5 cast bullets. As for the target, it's not great. The cast bullets were landing on the left side of the target, maybe 8 inches left at 50 yards. The jacketed bullets were no doubt flying over the top. I'll have to spend the time later on to get the sights dialed in, but for now, the carbine is functioning, and I'm happy with that. Earlier in this series, I showed a spare barreled action I have. I used it to donate the front sight. It will come in handy once again, since it has an ejector box. Here's a better look at the original. It's sitting slightly away from the receiver, not flush like it should be. I had a real tough time installing the flat spring in it, so I may have bent it at the time, not realizing it would cause an issue later on. I'll swap the two to see if it makes a difference. That's looking much better. It's sitting flush against the receiver. Hopefully it'll perform better too. I'll test it out with a dummy round. And that ejected just fine. You can see the ejector and the bolt face here. It should work better next time I take it out. While this is the end of this series, this won't be the last time you see the Kar 98 on this channel. This project overall has been very challenging, but ultimately worth it in the end, resulting in a unique rifle that no one else has, or at least no one else has a shooting example of. To anyone that has followed since the beginning, I want to thank you for your support, and thanks for watching.